Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this introduction to mindfulness. Welcome also to everyone who's joining at a later stage, watching the recording of this, maybe because they're on a shift right now. I'm zooming also from North Wales, from a very small village. Don't know if you've heard of Betws and it's above the hills of Corwyn, in between Llangollen and Betws um, Often people wonder about their speaker, so I'll say two or three sentences about myself. My holiday home growing up was always in Wales, near, in Rhysfaen, very near Colwyn Bay. We had a caravan, and every weekend we'd go there. We never went abroad as a family. We always went to Wales. So this is like full circle for me, coming back to Wales 7 years ago and absolutely adoring it. So in my working life, I've been a primary school teacher most of the time. And also I've had a semi-pro act as an entertainer for the elderly. And these days I'm still tutoring online, doing some counseling work alongside the mindfulness. So when I do counseling sessions, I like to do the mindfulness with it. Um, yeah, so let's kick straight off. There'll be quite a bit of talking, but I'll break it up with people going into breakout rooms. I thought there'd be more people than this, so we might only have two breakout rooms. We'll see. And then we'll be doing a little bit of meditation practice, just very short ones, and then back to speaking. So I'd like to say initially that mindfulness, the word itself is a misnomer. It's probably a poor translation from the Pali language, which comes from the various Buddhist countries where the teachings first came from, around 2,500 years ago. And mindfulness is nothing to do with mindfulness. If anything, it's more to do with an emptying of the mind, or better still, a witnessing of the mind and how it works. So a better translation of this Pali word might be awareness or presence. Mindfulness is a practice which helps us to be really present in our lives, more attentive and less distracted, less judgmental about oneself as well as others, and therefore more at peace. My favorite teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, says, when we are mindful, deeply in touch with the present moment, our understanding of what is going on deepens, and we begin to be filled with acceptance, joy, peace, and love. The intention with this practice, and it does take practice, is to live more fully in the present moment. It is said that too much future-based thinking can bring about anxiety. Too much past-based thinking can result in depression, regret, or simply being stuck in some kind of repetitive process. So another quote that I love is, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. And that's why it's called the present. And I imagine many of you here, particularly the ones who are working directly with terminally ill people, are naturally practicing mindfulness, even if you don't call it that. Time for these poorly people is limited and therefore extra special, extra poignant. Times of great love in a room, times of great pain and sadness, but all happening in the only time we really have, the present moment. There's really no need to take notes or try to remember anything today, as Coral will have a recording of the session, and I also sent her a resources sheet, which she's kindly agreed to send out to everybody. And on that sheet, actually, are the names of two very special people who, between them, must have worked for around 6 decades in innovative ways with the terminally ill. You may have heard of them or one of them. Stephen Levine has written a most moving book called Healing into Life and Death. And someone who can be considered his successor, Frank Ostaseski, has also written a wonderfully helpful book called The Five Invitations. And it's subtitled something like What the Dying Have to Teach Us About Living. And both of the books, of course, refer to many different situations with past patients. So mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience. It isn't more complicated than that. It's opening to or receiving the present moment, pleasant or unpleasant, just as it is, without clinging to it or rejecting it. In fact, Ostaszewski says, push nothing away. Because if you do try and stop things, you're not open to life, really. If we watch ourselves in action, quite often we're not at ease with the moment we're in. We're wishing it was different in some way. Perhaps the moment feels not good enough or too painful, or perhaps there's a belief that it will all be better when we reach a different moment. One mindfulness writer says, argue with reality and you're bound to lose, but only 100% of the time. So mindfulness is very much about how we meet each moment that arises. We can't stop what's happening to us. Quite often we can't stop it, but we can choose our response to it. So I don't want to talk too much at once. So I propose we do a short sit now. And sit is the word that mindfulness people use for a meditation practice, because it usually is sitting. Sometimes it's lying or walking, actually. There are walking meditations. But in this case, as everybody's on a chair, or that I can see, we can have a little practice. In fact, can I have a show of hands for anybody who has tried to meditate before? Okay, not many, which is great, because I just want to try maybe for the first time 2 or 3 minutes to see how it goes. And if anybody doesn't want to take part for any reason, of course, that's fine. Yeah, it might be 3 to 5 minutes I've put here. And we're going to focus on the breath, using the breath as an anchor to the present moment. So the mind will likely be wandering, and I'm going to keep encouraging you to come back to the present moment by focusing on the breath. And this is used in Tai Chi, in yoga, in lots of different modalities. And the reason for that is, or one of the reasons, is that the body is in real time. You know, if we have pain, it's in the now. The mind is often in the future or the past, but the body doesn't lie. The body is always right there. So when we're using the breath as an anchor, and by anchor, I mean just coming back to the present moment each time, that's the breath is our anchor. It's just a way of keeping that focus. I'm here now. It's like this breath and this breath and this breath. Okay, so see how it goes. Just have a little sip. You might even find it a little bit amusing the way the mind will wander in all directions. And it's not a case of you're getting it wrong. It's just that's what the mind does. And the moment of mindfulness is actually noticing what the mind's doing. So the noticing of the mind drifting is mindfulness itself. And then just gently coming back to the breath. So what happens in a lot of meditation circles, just to signify the start and the end of the meditation, someone strikes a bell or a bowl like this. Okay. So if it's comfortable for you to do so, just letting your eyes close. And if it's not comfortable, you can just lower your gaze. And we close the eyes to shut out all the external stimuli and just get a sense of what's going on inside rather than all the constant distractions when our eyes are open. So before we get into it, just take a few moments if you need to adjust your body to make yourself more comfortable in any way. Ideally in an upright position, but still so that it's balanced and comfortable. And then just noticing your breathing, but not doing anything special, just paying attention to the breath, noticing where it enters the body, maybe through the nostrils or the mouth, and where it exits the body. And for some people, it's helpful to do a little count, maybe 3 or 4 seconds on the in-breath and 3 or 4 seconds on the out-breath. And already you may notice the mind wandering. Could be saying, oh, when's this going to finish? Could be saying, what's this guy on about? Could be saying, oh, damn, I didn't get the onions. Anything can happen, but just bring the mind back to the breathing, ideally in and out through the nostrils, but not if you can't do that. And if you're really attentive to the breath, you may be able to detect that it's cooler when you breathe in through the nostrils, and then it's warmer when you breathe out. And then another subtle thing that you may not have noticed is when you breathe out, there's a pause, there's a natural pause that the body makes before the next in-breath. So see if you can observe that on the next few cycles. You breathe in and you breathe out, and then the body has a resting point before taking the next breath. And again, if the mind wanders, gently bringing it back, using this breathing as an anchor for the present moment. And one of the points of meditation is just to give ourselves a little bit of time out from all the busyness of daily life, a chance to recharge a little, and a chance to do nothing, to have nothing expected of you, and to get a sense of just your being a human being and not a human doing. And life is a mixture of both, of course, but we often neglect just that sense of being. So, opening your eyes when you're ready. And thank you for participating in that initial practice. Maybe went on a little bit longer than I intended. So if I ask you to go into breakout rooms, I'm just thinking actually, there's a lot of people in one room. So I guess that's you're all just using one computer. So, ooh. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Who could somebody from that room tell me who the host is? The room with a lot of people in.
Hi, it's myself, Emma.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, I can see you now. So
Yes.
really, if I think there's one, two, three, four.
There's
Yeah.
eight with
Oh,
myself.
uh, ooh, hang on.
Is that too many?
Actually, do you know what? I don't think we need the breakout rooms. I don't think so. No. What I was just going to ask you to do. Well, no, we do need it, don't we? It's just that I'd like to. I haven't used breakout rooms. I've been a member of a breakout room, but haven't organized them. Ideally, I want Emma's group to be on their own, of course. But I don't know if I can just select the others to be together, and then we could kind of have two groups. Or oh, would you um organize to sort of not shut down, but block the rest of us out for say 5 minutes?
I
Um,
could go with Neris, sorry, would that help or not?
sorry?
I could go in with Neris because I'm in the same building. Would that help or not?
Do you know what? Let's just keep it open because
Okay.
I don't want to lose the moment. I was just basically going to throw it open to anybody who'd be brave enough to say how that felt or what they noticed or any comments really, especially first timers. And don't be worried about, saying something that you think might offend me because it won't.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Carol.
You
Yeah,
can hear me because this computer is quite funny when I talk at it. Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you.
Yeah. I felt really relaxed, but I did notice that my mind kept wandering.
Very normal.
So bringing it back to the breath is something I've never done before. Just concentrating on my breath, so then I knew I was in the now.
Yeah.
So that is that's a good tip, that one.
Have you had any other techniques for dealing with the mind but overworking or
No, I go for hypnotherapy for
okay.
confidence and anxiety and stress. So only whenever I feel like I need some more. But
Yeah.
I've never really had to concentrate on the breath. It's always been thinking of a mist in the top of my head and then floating it
Okay.
down the rest of my body. So that's a new
Yeah.
one. I like that one. It's something I could do in the office
Oh,
when I'm
great.
having a stressful moment. So it's good. I enjoy that one.
Yeah. If you haven't got more than a moment, there's something called 3 conscious breaths, which just means to take 3 conscious breaths. Just notice the cycle 3 times. You can probably go in the toilet if you need to and just go through that little cycle, which takes probably 30 seconds, 20 seconds. So it's a nice thing to do.
Thank you.
And thanks. Anybody else with any feedback from that first one?
I just feel like I want to go to sleep now.
It's a common hazard with meditation. Often when you're with a group of people, you hear a snore starting to come somewhere in the room or other bodily function.
How do you bring yourself back? I'll bring you back, don't worry.
That's another reason for the bowl. Now that happens, and again,
Sorry, you're still on speaker.
we try to never chastise ourselves because we do that enough generally in our lives. So it's just that if the body's tired, then the body's doing that for a reason. So there's no really getting it wrong or right in that way. If that happens, that needs to happen. But yeah, it's a common thing people talk about. Anybody else have anything there on their mind? No, there'll be another chance to practice later. So I'll do a bit more on the talk itself. Yeah, mindfulness teachers often compare the mind to a monkey, and they call it monkey mind when it's darting all over the place or stuck in some repetitive way of thinking. And the practice of mindfulness or presence helps us to notice when this is happening, and then we have the choice to return to full awareness in the present moment. As I mentioned in the meditation itself, we're human beings, not human doings, and yet we give so little time to simply being. I'm sure many of you practice mindfulness at work without formally calling it so, just being alongside someone in their suffering and sharing the space with them, not rushing to try to fix something that may not be able to be fixed, but just sharing those precious moments. The formal practice of mindfulness is meditation, and the informal practice takes place during the rest of our daily life. One can practice whilst eating, mindful eating, walking, mindful walking, anything, brushing your teeth, giving a talk. It's how you do something and whether you're really there and embodied whilst it's happening. I mean, how many of us eat mindlessly, for example, or go for a walk and perhaps be so lost in the mind or in conversation that we don't notice the trees, the sky, the birds, etc. So it is what we give our attention to and how we give our attention. My own teacher puts it this way: see and know that you're seeing, hear and know that you're hearing, taste and know that you're tasting, etc. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But I don't think it's that simple. At any moment, we might ask ourselves if our attention has been captured by a thought or an external stimulus that we've become identified with, and whether this has happened consciously or unconsciously. For example, let's say our mobile phone makes a ping. At that moment, we've got a choice. We can attend to the phone, or we can continue what we're doing. But how many of us allow our attention to be captured by the phone? And if we give this amount of power to the mobile phone, then we've lost something of ourselves, unless, of course, we consciously decide that the phone is important at that moment. But with the rise of technology, we're constantly being bombarded with potential distractions, various media fighting for our attention, often in the hope that we will subscribe to something or other, which usually involves parting with money. So it's becoming vitally important that we maintain our independent awareness of what's really going on. In the Western world, many of us probably have a higher standard of living than ever before, and yet there seem to be higher levels of mental health issues than ever before. Perhaps change has happened too quickly for us to cope with as a species. There's so much noise around, and I'm using the word noise in its widest sense. Increased road, rail, air traffic, increased pollution, building sites, buildings appearing everywhere, and decreasing our natural green spaces. Mobile phones and computers pinging their notifications every other minute via Facebook, Instagram, or any other app that we haven't purposely silenced. So how do we find some peace? Well, one of the ways is to take some time out through meditation, the simple and natural practice, as we did, of closing our eyes and allowing for some silence, a sense of being rather than doing. Recently, oh yeah. I put, we often seem to place so much more effort on doing things rather than allowing ourselves from time to time to rest in peace. And when I wrote that phrase, rest in peace, I became curious why it hasn't been used more commonly during our lives, but it seems to be reserved for when someone's passed on. At best, meditation is an opportunity to rest in peace. Though, of course, sometimes meditation is not peaceful because we often come face to face with our own minds. Also, it might seem, well, I'll say a bit more about that later. It also might seem that meditation goes against everything we've been told. Don't be idle. Don't be lazy. Don't sit around doing nothing. But part of the practice of mindfulness is to break the conditioning that we've been fed with and find out what life is about for ourselves. Not to live mechanically, according to someone else's agenda, or dare I say, to some religion's agenda, but to really find out what works for oneself. So let's return for a moment to that bit of conditioning we might have to deal with around selfishness or taking time for ourselves. Isn't it selfish to sit around not doing anything? Well, yes, it is self-centered, but who is it that's living our life? It's ourselves. At the very least, a meditation practice of even as little as 10 minutes a day can provide great nourishment, a period of time out and regeneration from our busy lives, or it can be used as a time for contemplation to look at the bigger issues, which are always there, but often pushed aside for fear that they might make us feel uncomfortable. And this is where mindfulness is slightly different from our usual modus operandi. It encourages a moving towards what is difficult so that we can become more familiar with areas that we struggle with. It can be used as a kind of self-therapy. Our normal way of dealing with difficulty doesn't really work. Normally, we try to numb our emotions or our physical pain by taking antidepressants or drinking lots of alcohol, maybe gambling, anything that we can distract ourselves away from the issue and suppress the feelings. But the issues and the difficult feelings remain. So mindfulness, as I say, moves towards those things. We don't push anything away. So as well as encouraging the pursuit of peace, it also means that we will have to face areas of difficulty where we might be stuck in our lives. And this is how it can be seen as a kind of self-therapy. The peace we seek may only be truly available when we've faced and moved through many personal difficulties, not least the relationship we have to ourselves. And I'll say a little bit more about that later on. So at this point in the talk, there may be some voices inside people's heads saying, oh, I can't be doing with all that stuff. I just want to get on with my life. And that's fine too. But might it not be might it not be living a life that's not fully explored? And Socrates, the ancient philosopher, is reputed to have said, an unexplored life is not worth living. But, you know, that's open to what you think about it, really. So I thought the first meditation was, we'll have a little break from me talking too much. The first meditation was showing you how we can focus on the breath. And this second one, again, about the same length of time, is to focus on the mind. We might start with the breath, but then we're going to have a look at what's actually going on, what this monkey mind is doing, so that we can become more aware of it. So it's like encouraging you to become the witness of yourself, really. It's like there's an impartial observer watching what's going on here. Or some people might call it the higher self. Okay. So again, I'll sound the bowl. And again, letting your eyes close if it's comfortable. And finding a way of sitting that's balanced, upright, and at ease. Adjusting your limbs if they need adjusting, so you're comfortable. Maybe relaxing the muscles in your face Sometimes we don't realize we hold a lot of tension in our face, particularly our jawbone. So you might want to just loosen the jawbone, let the facial muscles relax. And connect in with your breathing as we did before. No need to force anything, just letting the body do its own thing, but focusing on what's happening with the breathing. Bringing a friendly awareness to your experience, a curiosity. Notice the rising and falling of the belly or the chest, rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. And wherever you sense your breath the most, let this be the place to rest your awareness, to help you keep connected and in touch with the present, the here and now. And the mind will repeatedly get captured by thinking patterns. That's normal. The thoughts may be in words and stories, or images and movies. At some point, you'll realize that you have been a little lost in thought, and appreciate the moment you wake up to noticing that, noticing your mind has wandered. And you may add a soft, silent label, thinking. Or if you recognize the kind of thought you were lost in, you could say, if it was a planning thought, just internally say, planning. Or if it was just imagining something, just internally noticing that and saying, imagining or remembering. And keep returning to the breath. And the next time the mind wanders, internally just see if you can find a word or a phrase for what it's doing. Maybe noticing that it's most likely future or past-based thinking. And just allowing those thoughts as they come and go, to just letting them go. Because they do come and go unless we hang on to them. Returning to the breath as an anchor. And when you notice the wandering of the mind and you return to the breath, perhaps celebrating the fact that you've woken up out of that mental trance that occurred. Letting yourself be open and curious about noticing the arising, the continuation and dissolving of thoughts, maybe as words or images. Thoughts are the natural occurrence of our brains. They appear and disappear due to past conditioning. They often come unasked, and they're fleeting. So we're not worried about the content of your thoughts here. We're just observing the actual phenomenon and experience of thinking itself. Like being at a train station, sitting on a bench with many trains coming and going. If you can just stay put, observing the trains of thought coming and going, and not getting on any of the trains, just coming back to the breath. Seeing the mind as a useful tool for our use, but not a useful master. You may remember earlier on, we noticed the space between the out-breath and the next in-breath. And I encourage you to notice the space between thoughts. Is there a space? And what happens in that space between thoughts? What if that space expanded and the mind was largely at peace and just called upon as an instrument when needed? So we're coming to the end of our meditation. You might want to wiggle your toes and fingers or take a deeper breath. You might want to stretch a little or begin to move. Once again, thanks for entering into the practice. And once again, if anybody would like to contribute, what happened for them or what they noticed.
I find it really difficult to concentrate on keeping my thoughts contained. What I try and do is try and clear my mind, but it's because I'm new to it, I'm not able to do that yet.
What happens? Is it like one thought after the next? Or?
Yeah, it's like constant, one leads into the next one, and that reminds me of something else, then that reminds me of something else. So
did you have a go at trying to do that internal naming? Like
yes, I did.
What kind of thought it was?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So that in itself's making you mindful of what's happening, though.
Definitely. I'm going to try this again every day, probably.
Did you have, if you're not, if it's okay to say it in the group, did you have a kind of thinking that happened more than others, like a imagining or a planning or a
Yeah,
remembering?
there was a lot of planning ones because I know I've got a
Yeah.
lot on today.
Ah, yeah,
So yeah, it depends on the workload, doesn't it, of the day, I guess, or what you've got coming up.
absolutely.
Yeah, I try to keep bringing it back though to like you know outside walking or watching the sea and stuff like that. Just to every time I notice myself wandering,
Yeah.
I try and bring it back. Mm. But yeah,
It's
it worked great.
we're so focused on having to be responsible, aren't we, that it's really hard just to take this time.
Yeah,
I mean, I bet maybe half of you have thought, well, I could be doing this, this is going to need doing, and I'm sitting here. And even in this kind of a meeting, we find it hard to just let ourselves have some time out. But your organization seems pretty good on self-care because I saw your program. So it seems to value. I mean, it's a mindful way of working that it values giving you back something like this. I mean, I'm going to say something about that later in the talk about, carers primarily needing to care for themselves so that they're in a strong position to care for others.
yeah, definitely. We've got a lot of staff engagement sessions just about well-being coming up for everybody. I think
Brilliant.
everybody's had the calendar now, haven't they?
They've had the what?
We've sent that calendar out to
Oh, the
everybody, so
calendar.
you should
Yeah.
all have it. But if you haven't, get in touch with me or Emma.
Yeah. It's great that your organization does that. Would anybody else like to say? It might be a bit embarrassing, I suppose, to share what your thinking patterns, but or what you might have felt about that particular meditation.
I was definitely just going in some other state, like it's like I could see this path and then this kind of Egyptian tomb, and then I was like, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be actually doing that. I'm supposed to
Wow.
be aware of what I'm doing, and then I was nodding. I thought, but I was present as well, so I wasn't thinking anything, which is very unusual.
But it came as an image, though, didn't it, in your case?
Not a known image, like a link between awake and sleep. It wasn't a.
No, I meant the Egyptian thing. That was an interesting I mean, there's
Mm,
kind of symbolism. I'm wondering what it might be symbolic for.
no, I don't know. Could be a mummy. But it was nice and it was very easy to get into. And
Good.
it's so much nicer when it's a guided
Right, yeah.
rather than trying to go into it yourself.
For the first few years, probably, or well, certainly the first year or two, I really enjoyed the guided meditations. But because I've been doing it for quite a while, I like nothing more than just to sit with a few friends or sit on my own now. I used to use music as well, but now I find it all distracting. But I think if you're new to the practice, it's great to have. I forgot something on the resources sheet. Ugh, I'll try and send it again. Yeah, it's great to have guided ones. I was going to send you a website where there's lots of short guided ones you could choose from. But I have put down a couple of apps you might even have heard of. One's called Headspace, and one's called Insight Timer, and I think there's one called Calm. I think they're the three main ones, and they're pretty much free, and they're fabulous. They're on the resources sheet though.
And there's all the recordings from Peacefulness in a Frantic World, or Finding Peace in a Frantic World.
Yeah,
We've got all of the on YouTube, so that's a really good resource.
yeah.
Mark Williams, I always
Oh, right, yeah. I
ask
have
people
heard of
for
that.
that.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. Yeah. Finding peace in a frantic world.
Something like that, but
Yeah,
it's all of the recordings are on YouTube for free, so it's got all, body scan, 3 minute breathing space, it's got everything on there, so it's a really good one to go to.
great. Thank you. So yeah. I think this is the bit on self-care. Something else I'd like to add is that mindfulness encourages, or indeed leads to, the unfolding of compassion. It's about bringing a kind attention to what's happening at any moment. For example, if we try to practice meditation and it seems too hard, we notice with kindness what the mind is doing to interfere with the process, then we simply try again. Or in daily life, we might notice how hard we can be on ourselves, and then we have an opportunity to bring kindness to ourselves instead of harshness or feelings of unworthiness. Stephen Levine, who I mentioned earlier, suggests we treat ourselves as if we are our own only child. But how often do we do the opposite and remove ourselves even from our own heart? Let's think of some examples. Perhaps you're entertaining guests and you slightly overcook something, and then that voice in the head says, "Ah, I always do that." Or perhaps a person has struggled with weight issues through their life, and that's a great one for self-loathing, because one never feels the right weight. And it's a way of always feeling unworthy or not up to scratch. Perhaps a person feels that they can't get it right for others, or that others can't get it right for them. And that's another way of not being in the moment, because it's as if there's always another moment that would be better, if only this or if only that. So the way to move out of what has been called the trance of unworthiness is to notice when these ways of being are in operation, and the noticing of them is a moment of mindfulness. It's not a cure, but it's the beginning of welcoming oneself back into one's own heart by noticing such events as they are happening. Not so long ago, I had a real aha moment, or they sometimes call it a light bulb moment, don't they? I can't remember what I was thinking, but it was some kind of recurring self-denigrating thought. But I noticed it like catching a thief in the act. And I just said to myself, why am I beating myself up this way? And why would I want to beat myself up in this way? So now when I have an unkind thought or a comment to myself, I notice it whilst it's happening. And that phrase immediately comes to mind. Why would I want to beat myself up? And that was a breakthrough moment for me, in the sense of a true beginning of self-compassion, like a coming home to oneself or a fuller self-acceptance. Self-compassion most likely comes before compassion for others, because have you noticed how many people that are forever doing things for others often become debilitated themselves at some point? And this is probably because there has been self-neglect on the self-compassion front. They've probably been pushing themselves too hard. If we try to get ourselves properly in order, then we're much better placed to help others. I think there is some good mindful thinking. Oh, I said this before, behind your organization because of the program I've seen and the opportunities for self-care that are happening. So I'm going to miss that bit because we're running out of time. Yeah, a while ago, I decided to be really honest with myself. Well, before writing this speech, which has been partly rewritten for this purpose, but so it's quite a while ago now. I thought, let's be honest, what has mindfulness ever done for me? It sounds like that Monty Python thing. What was it? What have the Romans ever done for me? Or in the case in that room with lots of people, what have the Egyptians ever done for me? No. So I made a list and I was really honest. And I can say to you, this is what I feel after quite a few years of practice. I feel I'm more accepting, a more accepting person. I'm less judgmental. They kind of go together, don't they? More accepting, less judgmental. Not striving so much. Being able to let go more easily. And there's a wonderful YouTube on the resources list given by a monk in Australia, all about, I think he calls it 4 ways of letting go. But this guy's particularly entertaining. When you first see it, you think, oh God, I'm not going to sit and listen to a monk for an hour. But it's wonderfully entertaining. It's had a couple of million views, so I strongly recommend that. And it's about letting go. What else has it done for me? Developing more patience, more trust, not taking things so personally. That's definitely improved, because when something hurtful happens, you can actually see that it's giving you information about the person who made you feel hurt. It gives you more information about them. And even more than that, you can see that they're in pain at some level, or they wouldn't have hurt you. They're hurting you out of their own pain, really. And you begin to see things like that operating, and you think, you know, I'm not going to take that so personally. So leading on from that, becoming more generous and kinder, obviously being able to be not absolutely in the moment. I don't claim that kind of enlightenment, but more in the moment, and more curious. And by curious, I mean more open and more spontaneous and more interested in life as it's unfolding. So sounds like I'm trying to sell something, but they were honestly the things that I feel have benefited me. Let's see what's left. I'm going to miss out that little bit. So given that it's the mind that causes many of our problems in life, and it seems to stop us from being in the present moment, mindfulness gives us the opportunity to witness the mind. I think I said this in the meditation, witnessing the mind as a useful tool, but not letting it drive us mad. And how does it drive us mad? Well, probably because we identify with it as if it were real. For example, we might have the thought that something really needs to happen, and until it happens, we won't be at peace. I mean, my partner, she's a bit like that, you know, she gets something in her head and it has to be carried out, and there's no peace until it's all sorted. So you're kind of losing part of your life between that thought and then the ability to carry it out. So it could be I need to do the shopping because I'm cooking for some people tonight. So the mind keeps focusing on when it will get the shopping done, not noticing anything else that's going on, perhaps even on the way to the shops. And then when one's home again, one has the thought, I can't relax until I've made the meal for my friends. But when the meal's made, the people are about to arrive, the mind might be saying, I mustn't let the soup boil away whilst I'm chatting to them. So, you know, it's constantly taking us away from the present moment. And Frank Ostaseski, one of the guys I've mentioned, he says we have to try to find a place of peace in the middle of things. And I think, you know, I mean, ultimately, we're always in the middle of things. So, you know, we're aiming to find peace constantly, but that's some kind of enlightenment that most of us will never reach. But he's saying, you know, trying to find a place of peace in the middle of things, which I find a very helpful thought to hold on to. And that's one of his five invitations. Just checking how much. Okay, yeah, we're almost on time. So with a regular meditation practice like the second one we did, we can sometimes choose to focus on noticing what the mind is doing, what are its habitual ways of thinking, and how we're using up our mental energy. My own meditation teacher often says that the mind is not our true nature. It's simply a tool, or he says a computer for our use. But we get lost in believing the thoughts or totally identifying with the thoughts that arise when they're only thoughts. So returning to the example of a mobile phone, we could even see the mobile phone as a thought. And when it makes a sound, we can, as we said earlier, choose to identify with it or not. Same with thoughts. We can choose whether we identify with them or not. You know, obviously sometimes, as I said, it's a useful tool, but quite often it's not. Thoughts can be seen as passing electrical charges from the brain, most likely based on something that's happened in the past or imagined in the future. And yet we credit them with so much power, and we can become a slave to our own thoughts rather than their master. So this implies that there is a part of us that can witness the thoughts. I think I called it earlier the impartial observer, watching them as they arise, a deeper, truer part of our nature. And this is the space or the awareness that we begin to explore in meditation. Well, before I do my couple of sentence ending, just can I see if there's anybody who wants to say anything in the room, really, or ask anything?
That was really useful, helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Neris. Oh, it is Neris, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It was really, really helpful. My mind was monkeying all over the place until I sat down for that second. The second meditation worked really well.
Oh, yeah, good. Thank you for that comment. Well, the Dalai Lama was once asked, what is your religion? And he replied, my religion is kindness. So I love that answer. And I'm going to share this, for the ending, I'm going to share this slide, which reflects that my religion is kindness, I think. I'm just trying to find the share bit. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. See if this shows up.
Yeah, we can see that.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Has anybody heard that one before?
No.
It's a guy who recently died called Ram Dass, one of like a spiritual teacher or a meditation teacher. And yeah, it really, there's a short documentary on him. I think it's called Walking Each Other Home or something like that on Netflix. And he says this near the end, and I just burst into tears, because I think it's just encouraging us. We haven't got long on the planet, and it's encouraging us to be kind to each other.
Definitely.
Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. If people want to get in touch with you for one-to-one sessions or anything, is it okay for me to give your email address out?
I'd be delighted. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Yeah.
It's been great. And we've got you again, haven't we, in October?
Yeah, look forward to it.
You're doing
you.
the stress management techniques.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Probably
so
bring in a bit of hypnotherapy to that one.
fantastic. That's great. That's what we want to hear.
I'm just a bit nervous, Oh, yeah, no, I was nervous it wasn't recording, but
It is. Yeah, it is. It's flashing.
Still is.
It's flashing.
Oh,
I would have
brilliant.
made you do it all again anyway if it didn't. Just so I can send it out to everybody. But no, thank you. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say it was really good. It's an enjoyable experience, and it's been fun.
Well, thank you all for being
really relaxing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Have a good rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Coral.
Bye.